Hello and welcome to episode 523 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I'm anticipating that this podcast might be a little bit more challenging for me than most. We're going to be talking about a soundtrack that I worked on for a film that unfortunately was never finished because the filmmaker passed away before she was able to get it done. I wrote quite a bit of music for it. I haven't added up the entire time yet, but I'm going to guess it's close to an hour. What happened? Well, I'll get into this in a minute. The film is called POV. And before I forget and accidentally close the page like I always end up doing, I'm actually looking at the page on IMDB right now, which was, you put that up very quickly on IMDb. You want people to know that you're making a film. You want people to know who's in it, that sort of thing. Even though this was a local Arizona film, I don't think anybody was brought in from out of town. No, really well-known or named actors. Debbie was probably the most well-known, who was the filmmaker, Debbie Overbey. But here's what's interesting and why I have a hard time understanding the ins and outs of websites like IMDb. It has user reviews. It has a rating of 7.6. This film has never been seen by anybody because it was never finished. So I don't know who's going in and ranking anything. I don't know if that was something Debbie did or had people do to gain interest, because 7.6 is a fairly positive rating. But it also states that it has a runtime of 1 hour and 18 minutes, which is interesting because the editing was never completed. She had a budget of $13,422, which is estimated, which is a rather specific estimate. It wasn't down to the penny. I suppose a final figure couldn't really be made until the film was completed, right? Because you wouldn't know what you actually spent. So there's a difference between like what your initial budget might be, how much you actually have available versus what your actual expenditures were. So, interesting. I don't know what that money would have gone to, probably locations more than anything else. Maybe she was setting aside some for advertising, because this wasn't a film we were getting paid to do. It was just something that she approached a bunch of people about. She approached me originally about doing the score, and I'll get into that in a minute. I'm trying to remember the order of things, what happened first, because I did score another project for Debbie and her husband, Bart. That would have been a short film called Survivor Dude, which was a parody of the show Survivor Man. And apparently, though I never saw it myself, apparently he really liked it. He had put it up on his website. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was very comical. It was Debbie filming her husband, Bart Overbey. Some know him as Bartley. Really cool guy. Also passed away a year or so after Debbie did. And it was basically like him in these situations where he was trying to show you how to survive out in the wild, but really clearly had absolutely no idea what he was doing. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to put a link to that because I think I've got that on my YouTube page, if I'm not mistaken. If not, I'll see if I can find it and put a link to it, because it was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing the score. I was still pretty green at this point. I'd done a few 48-hour film challenges and had some fun with those. I met Bart and Debbie through the Phoenix Independent the Phoenix Independent Filmmakers Group, which was Tammy McDaniel's project that she had started in Phoenix. Brought tons of people together. I don't even know how many films were made because of her group. Debbie had her own group, SubPar Productions, but she also had Zony was her website. I couldn't find it. I'm sure it doesn't exist anymore because there's nobody that's paying for the domain and the content to be hosted anymore. But she was another one of those people that just, both Tammy and Debbie spent so much time just bringing people together, connecting people with things that they needed. Like, hey, do you know any gaffers in town? Hey, do you know where to get this kind of equipment? Hey, all those kind of things that people didn't really have resources for it. And Debbie and Tammy stepped in and they created their websites, they networked, they got to know tons of people. And if you were going to make a phone call, it was, because you needed something, you didn't know who to reach out to, your call was either going to be to Tammy or Debbie. And they grew to be very, very respected. And I guess Debbie had been an actress before. I didn't know her before any of this, as I was getting into the filmmaking scene as a film composer. But apparently she had done some good amount of work. She had a name. She wasn't just like somebody that rose out of the depths. She had a history in the business. So she was coming in with some pretty solid cred, and that was great. I imagine that helped her build Zoni very quickly. I'm looking, and it looks like it was around 2008 when I started working on the soundtrack for POV. And then I gotta look up Survivor Dude, because that would be... So Survivor Dude was 2009. So we were already into POV when she had me score that. I think she had some temp music in there. It was just something that was sitting on her hard drive for a while. She was always very busy, so busy doing things for other people and putting her own projects to the side. And I think at some point when we were working on the film, she said, if you've got the interest, I've got another project. And of course I said, well, sure. Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in scoring something else, as a young film composer, networking, getting into the business. You want to take on any project you feel that you can contribute to positively. Some people just want to take on every project, which isn't necessarily a good idea. If it's not a project that you feel you can contribute to positively, probably not the best idea to do it. But what's most important in situations like that I have learned, and I can't remember, I'm sure I talked about this in my book, Becoming an Indie Film Composer. If I didn't, if I ever update that thing again, which I probably won't, this would be a good thing to talk about. But it's not in the fact that you would be best served saying no. They would be best served by you saying no if you're, if it's a score that you're not keen to doing for whatever reason, whether it be something that you don't want to score because it's a political or religious film, or you're just not versed enough in Western music and don't feel that you can learn it quickly enough or contribute something musically that would be beneficial and really help enhance the film. Maybe you're just not connecting with the film and the material, whatever it is. That's not the challenge. The challenge is all in how you deliver that information to the filmmaker. So it's okay to say no, but if you just say, yeah, I'm not interested in that, then that's going to leave a pretty bad taste in their mouth. They're going to wonder if there's something wrong with their film. They're definitely not going to ever want to approach you again about another project. If you say something like, I don't think that I'm the best person for this film, and here's why. And you say, I just, the style of music that I do, I don't think would serve this film well, or I don't know this kind of music well enough to feel I could really do service to what you've created here. You're saying the same thing, but it's all in how you deliver it. And it's most important for them to understand why, so they don't start second guessing their film, or they don't look at you negatively. They'll understand if you communicate well. That's the most important thing. But when it came to this, I'm like, well, it sounds like a lot of fun. It's, parody. I did so many comedies. I don't like comedy. It's not anything I typically watch. I mean, I've got, a few of those favorites, but for the most part, I'm not big on comedy. And I most of the films I scored ended up to be comedy, even though I wanted, drama, thriller, horror, that kind of thing. But it sounded like a lot of fun. We were really building a great relationship. I mean, we had known each other decently well when she approached me for this film, and I was enjoying writing music for it. And I want to get into that a little bit, because typically the composer might work on a couple of themes, might want some character themes or main themes, or maybe a location theme or something approved ahead of writing the score for the film. But mostly we need to film. We need at least a rough cut to get some visuals, to get an idea of the atmosphere, so that the score is going to match what you're seeing. And it seems like it's really part of that world. But there was nothing, because there was no script. There was a concept. So when she explained the concept to me, and she told me originally that she wanted like a Mortal Kombat type score for this film. But as she's explaining the concept to me, I'm thinking, I don't really think that's necessarily going to match the explanation that she's giving me. At least I'm not finding a way to connect with it. Maybe once I see the film, I'll be able to do that. But I went back, I double checked the Mortal Kombat soundtracks because I had an idea in my head of what they were. But before I approached her with any other ideas, I wanted to check them out and make sure I knew what I was getting into. So I listened to them. And I thought, yeah, I could kind of see that, but the world that she's explaining to me, it's not the, visual effect fantasy world that she's relating to this score. And I didn't really think that the score that she was asking for was going to match the atmosphere of the movie. I was having a really hard time connecting that, because she's thinking big screen, big visual, lots of just, dramatic stuff. And I'm like, but this film isn't going to be that at all. Not at all. So it's interesting how this developed, because she had a hard time working with editors because no one really understood the concept of the film. To this day, I'm not even sure I understand 100% what the concept of the film is. Basically, the idea was that there was going to be no script, that she had an idea of what she wanted in the film, though, but she didn't want to write parts. She wanted it to be very natural. She wanted to catch stuff in the moment. And I like that. I like that idea of doing something a little bit different. You're not going to sound scripted if you're not memorizing lines. Very, very true. And I'm sure it's something like that has been done before in the indie world. But so she wanted to basically just tell this story, but do it by way of setting up scenes that would create the footage that she would piece together to make the story be what she wanted. And that makes sense until we got to set, but I'll get to that. So the way that she explained it was that there was going to be 2 points of view. There was going to be like a backstory of these people got screwed over by a filmmaker. I can't remember if it was that he stole their film or just didn't pay them properly or didn't give them credit, whatever it was. It was something that a filmmaker screwed over this group of actors, and they wanted to get back at him. So they were going to set him up to pay him back. And I don't remember all the details now because it kind of changed. It morphed a little bit as time went on. And I understand that, you certainly as a writer myself, I get that you start with one concept. As you're working, it develops into other things. It morphs, you get new ideas, experiences come into play and all that. I certainly experienced that with my book, The Universal Court. So the story kind of changed a little bit, but the idea was that they were going to be working on screwing over this filmmaker. The film was going to be in black and white until one certain moment when they were going to do something and it was immediately going to flip to color, and then the whole tone of the film would change. And then she said, I want to have a second point of view where somebody's on to them. Somebody knows what they're doing and is spying on them, capturing footage of them getting ready to screw over this filmmaker, and they get it all on tape, and then they start stalking this group of people. I'm like, I love this concept. I think this is great. It gives us a lot to work with, but we're talking about, she wanted them to pose as homeless people. So we're going to be out we're going to be outside, hot sun. It's going to be filmed in Arizona. So you're looking at like the Arizona desert. You're looking at behind stores, near dumpsters, open fields, not pleasant places, but certainly not the grandiose images of Mortal Kombat. And so once she gave me this concept and I'm kind of visualizing, okay, I'm thinking about behind, say, a strip mall. And you've got, doors for delivery, you've got dumpsters, you've got trash, you've got a lot of dirt, an unkept up area, basically. And I'm like, okay, I kind of can work with that. So I'm thinking almost more dystopian music, because you're talking about homeless people. If you want, if you're going to have homeless people, you're not going to have this big, exciting, bombastic soundtrack. I mean, you want to play into the desperation, the desolate nature of the world that they live in. And obviously they were acting being homeless to trick in this filmmaker. So I wrote up a couple of pieces and I sent them over to you, and I said, I think I understand what you're going for, but what if we tried this instead? And she really liked what I did. And she goes, okay, forget the Mortal Kombat thing for now. We might circle back to that later, but I like where you're headed with this. So I thought, okay, great. I don't have any other projects on my plate right now. I'm in between albums. Let me work up some stuff. While I've got this all set up, I've got it in my head. Let me work up some ideas. So I just started writing music, and I started visualizing different scenes, what the film might have in it. Because again, there's no script, and just kind of going off of all of this and just what I'm picturing in my mind. I'm like, well, this is mostly background music. So it's going to be, it's going to be fairly universal, fairly interchangeable. And we can move the pieces around. It doesn't, only certain points does this need to be a cohesive storytelling type soundtrack. It's mostly going to be underscore and background music. So we're going to have, the opening. We're going to have the scene where we're going to set the stage to trap this filmmaker. Then we're going to have all this, open space of all these homeless people milling about, having conversations, whatever's going on. So there's just going to be a lot of background dystopian sound behind that. So it was a lot of that. And then we're going to have the perspective of the other guy, right? The one that's stalking these people, watching them set up this filmmaker. And so then we need another set of music for him. So I decided, and I, what if we did it where they both have some element of dystopian music? One has more percussion in it. One doesn't have any percussion in it. And I can't remember, honestly, I can't remember at the moment which one was which. I think the people that were setting the filmmaker up were the ones with the percussion, because they were the ones that were, the tension was building with them. So I was using percussion to ramp that up a little bit. And the guy that was stalking them wanted to be silent, not drawing any attention, but would have a level of intensity, a little bit of creepiness to it. So yeah, so that's what it was. So the homeless people had the percussion. The stalker had no percussion. So you're talking dark synthesizers, pads, nothing, no real melodies or anything, really more just dark atmosphere, creepy, stocky stuff. So that was the premise that I had. Debbie and I had a few conversations about it. We met at IHOP a few times, and we were on the same page. It was great. Then we have our first film meeting. And it was in the lobby of this motel off of Bell Road. I can't remember exactly where. I want to say around Bell Road and 35th Avenue. I'm pretty sure it was near the IHOP, but I'm not positive. But they had this little lobby in this little area where they had a table and like a coffee service, I guess, just like a breakfast nook or whatever. So we took that over, and Bart's there and I'm there and all the actors. And I knew some of the people, and there were other people I had never met before. So it was, it was kind of like a little meet and greet, getting to know you. And of course, I'm thinking, well, I'm the composer. I'm not really involved in any of this, but it's good to get familiarity with the people that you're writing music for and hear what ideas are going to be thrown out. Maybe I can learn more about the film and its development, or what ideas people have, if there's a change in direction. I don't have to worry about Debbie remembering everything and regurgitating it to me later. So, of course, I want to be there for the meetings. So, as the meeting is unfolding, she's giving me a character name, and I thought, that's kind of weird. Okay, maybe it's just something for the credits. So, my name is going to be Kyle. No rhyme or reason, just Kyle. You're Kyle. Okay, great. I'm Kyle, whatever. It's a film credit. Didn't really think much about it. But through the course of the meeting, she says, no, everyone who's in the production is in the film. Like, you're all actors. Now, Tammy tried to bring me into a couple of films as well. I'm not a fan of being on film. I'm really not. I know I've been in a couple of films, but I'm not an actor. I don't need to be seen as far as that goes. I have no acting skills. I feel very uncomfortable being around people as an actor because these are typically people that have studied their craft. They've worked hard. They've taken classes. They've done improv. They rehearse. They learn their lines, all this stuff. And so anytime anybody tries to put me into a position of acting, and I did, I had a drama class when we moved to Colorado because we didn't have a film and television production in Colorado, and I did have one in Michigan. So they had to put me somewhere, so they just put me in drama. I only had 1 month of school left when we moved because we moved in April, and I started school May 1st. School ended June 1st. So it was really whatever I did. It really didn't matter. I had good grades transferring over. So I couldn't have ruined my ability to graduate the 10th grade, even if I did basically nothing. So they put me in drama, and it was the closest thing to film and television production that they had. And which is interesting because it was kind of a college prep school. So I was surprised that they didn't have something a little more advanced, but, they were a sports school too. So they spent most of their money on sports and band. They had a pretty good band. But so I had points where I had to act. I opted quite brilliantly, if I will say so myself, I opted to run lights at the plays because that, for one, just separated me from everyone else because the lights were upstairs in a cage. And I could just work up there in the lighting booth quite happily, ignoring everyone else and just paying attention to the timing of the acting. And it also taught me a lot about running lighting, which I would later go on to do for some concerts and things. So it was very beneficial on a lot of fronts, but it kept me at a distance. That was the main thing. And so anyway, there were points where I had to do some improv stuff on stage, and it was okay, but here's people that have worked all year long. They're learning about acting and technique and all this stuff, and they've worked really hard at it. And here I am coming in, some guy with long hair from Detroit, and it was not an easy time. But I did the best I could with it. So, but anytime that anybody tries to get me to act, to read a script, to be around people who I respect for how hard they work, I feel very much like a fraud, like I don't belong there. I don't deserve to have screen time with people that have worked very hard on their craft. It just isn't fair. You should find somebody that deserves that screen time that isn't in the film. So I went back and forth with Debbie on this and finally conceded, okay, if the deal is that to get this score, I have to be on screen a little bit, fine. I'll do the best I can with it as I do. So we go to Scottsdale. Now, in the meantime, it was a couple of months, I think, before we were actually going to start filming. And I had to go get permission from my manager because I was working at a mortgage company. We didn't see borrowers very often, but we would have brokers and stuff that would come in the office, or potential brokers and whatever. So I had, and it was I guess would have been business casual, but I had to get permission to not shave for a month. And so that was a weird conversation with my boss. Yeah, I'm going to be in this movie. Is there any way I can just let myself go completely for a month and not care about my appearance and all that? So I grew my hair out a little bit, which I had been shaving at the time. I grew my hair out. I grew my beard out. It was, and of course, we're shooting in like June in Phoenix. It's 115 degrees outside when we're shooting. So that day was a very long day, and the follow-up day, because I think I only shot, I want to say 2 days on set. And it was amazing how much we actually caught during that time. But the first day was, all day, like literally from early morning until the sun went down. And then the second day was a few hours. But so we're out in Scottsdale behind this small strip mall, and exactly as I had pictured it, dumpster, dirt, dust devil here and there. but it was an interesting thing. So I was just trying to be as infinitesimal as possible. And Debbie, she's not going to let anything out of her sight, bless her heart. She comes up to me and like they film a couple scenes and I'm just sitting there on the sidewalk watching them do their thing. And, I had done, didn't really have to do makeup. I think they just dusted my face a little bit with powder and that was really all I needed because they didn't have to do any hair because I didn't really have much. And that's where I met Christy. And we'll get into Christy here in a little bit. But it was a very simple, a very simple process. And so anyway, I was just trying to be as little as possible and fulfill my commitment. If she needed me, I would be there. If she didn't, fine. That was perfectly fine with me. So she calls me over. She's like, okay, Scott, you're going to be in this scene. I want you to hide behind the dumpster. And if you hear Bartley say the word bagel, come out and start talking to him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I can't remember if I think she filmed some of it. And I think she might have had somebody else filming like if she was going to be in it, I think she might have had other people filming. Or she was filming as her character. I think she was filming as her character. I don't remember the ins and outs. It was a long time ago. But of course, I'm like, can't hear half of what's being said because I'm hiding behind the dumpster. We're out. There's no mics. There's no headphones, no monitoring, no nothing. So I hear Bart say the word and I just go, oh God, of course he did. I think he did it on purpose. But so I just creep out from behind the dumpster. Start talking to Bart. I don't know how long we're going to be filming. And I make the stupid mistake of kneeling down. Don't ever do that if you have bad knees because it's going to be very awkward and very painful. I'm like, I can feel my knees hurting more and more and more. And I'm like, I've got to shift position. I don't know why I didn't think it was okay to just change my position because there was no blocking. I mean, this wasn't a scripted scene, so I could really do anything I want. As long as I stayed within the vicinity of talking to Bartley, I was following my instructions. So like 20 minutes into this scene, I finally just sit down. Like, I don't know why I didn't do this. And I even said to Bart when she was away, because, she was moving around. And I even said to Bart, I'm like, oh my God, my knees are killing me. He goes, why don't you just sit down? And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. Okay, so I finally did. And he was great. He's so good at improv. He was talking about the war. He was dressed as this like ex-military guy. Just seriously incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. And we shot the scene. She yelled cut, and that was that. So then we took our lunch break, and I think we all brought food and just kind of hung out and ate and relaxed a little bit and had some nice conversations. And then we went and filmed the scene, which would be the color wash, where we went from black and white to color at the action where we actually killed the filmmaker that we were trying to get revenge on. And a couple of times, I remember a couple of times when we were filming, Debbie would be like, did you guys see that? Is, setting up that somebody's watching us and we kind of suspect somebody might be watching us, but we're not sure. It doesn't stop us because we're all in at this point, and we kill the filmmaker. We have this whole blood splatter scene. It was really, really well done. And I'm hearing the music in my head of how this should all come together based on some of the stuff I had already written. It was a lot of fun. So we do that day. And then the next day we shot at Tempe Pollock Cinemas, which is, a just regular movie theater. And she had rented out the theater for a couple of hours. We shot a couple of awards scenes that she had set up for local films. One I actually scored called The New Place. They were doing awards because we were getting an award for this film that nobody knew was really the death of this filmmaker. And so they were okay showing it. And as we're giving our speeches and all that, she points somebody out in the crowd. She mentions it to me and to our, quote unquote security guard. And he ushers us out the back door. And then we shot the scene that was setting up the previous day, just like going to the event where we were going to um, attack the filmmaker. And so I having that visual in my head, us walking down the sidewalk and setting all that up, it gave me the idea for the music for a piece called "Staging the Event," which is pretty early on. And so that's pretty much how it all came together. And before I go into the rest of the film and the potential editing process and all that, I do want to take a little bit of a side note and talk about Christy. Christy Cooper was one of the two makeup people, and I don't know how she and Debbie had connected, but Christy was absolutely wonderful. She and I would go work together on another film through the Phoenix Independent Filmmakers group called The Hierophant. We stayed in touch. Really, really sweet, intelligent young kid. I think it was just after we shot The Hierophant, she went to LA and went to special effects school. And she had just graduated from that. She turned 21. She was following her boyfriend home and was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And it's pretty sad because she had so much potential, incredibly intelligent, incredibly sweet young girl. And just like that, it was over. And I think it's one of those things that, yes, it's hard to deal with the loss of somebody you care about. I think it's sometimes difficult when you think of what could have been, like what she would have gone on to do, how she might have affected films, the projects she might have gotten, and all that. Plus just, the joy that she spread. Anytime you were around her, you could be completely exhausted, and she would just walk by and just make you smile. She was one of those people. And there's a great shot of her and I on the set of The Hierophant that I'll always treasure because it was the last time I saw her. And yeah, she was just such a sweet, incredible person. But this is where I got to meet her and a lot of really cool folks. But it was a very interesting process and project. So I'll get into a little bit of what happened post shooting, because it was, Debbie got very busy. She couldn't really do anything with the project for a while. She had I don't know what all goes on in the editing process. She said something about she had to like render all the footage to make it editable, and it took a while to get to the point where she was able to have that done. And then she was looking for an editor. She didn't want to edit it herself. And I think that was the downfall of the project and why it never came out. So before I get into that, I wanted to play you guys a piece of music that was basically going to be the part where we were walking to set up the trap for the filmmaker. And here's a little bit of that. So that was us walking on our way in our regular clothes. Wait, were we in regular clothes? I seem to feel like we were. I was thinking that we filmed this on the day that we shot the movie theater stuff, but because I thought I was only there for 2 days, but there might have been three. Because I can't remember why we would have been in regular clothes. We were dressed up for the theater stuff because it was a big, like a big award show. And I wrote some cues for that, which it was fun kind of writing a cue for an award to be presented for a film I scored. That was kind of neat. But yeah, we were, for some reason, I think, yeah, we weren't like dirty and dusty yet. So maybe that was a separate day we shot that. I honestly don't remember. But in any case, as we get into, the post-production of it, and of course, I'm still writing music. I've got a total of 23 pieces I ended up writing for the film. And, it was a matter of what was going to be workable and what wasn't. And there was no way I was going to know. So anytime that I had an idea or I was working on something and something, maybe I was, working on one thing and then an idea for POV would strike me, I would save that and develop it later. So I had all these pieces of music that either were or weren't going to work. And Debbie goes through a couple of different editors over a period of a couple of years. It's one of those things where when you can't pay people to carve out time, and they don't dedicate time to you. And I understand, I've done a lot of free work. And I understand that, yeah, if there's paid work, you have to do the paid work stuff and the free work gets pushed to the side. But at the same time, if you make a commitment to somebody, you really have to follow through with that commitment. That really says a lot about either your situation that you shouldn't have taken it on, or had a stronger conversation with whoever you agree to work with about timeframes, keep them apprised of updates. Hey, something came in. This is going to take me away from your project for a couple of months. If you want to go with someone else, let me know. Those conversations are very important, but time also passes quickly. And before you know it, a year goes by, you don't have any footage, nothing's been done. But I think there was also something else at play. So after a couple of different editors, Debbie finally said, I'm just going to have to do it myself. I just don't know when I'm going to have the time to do it. Now, I'm not an editor. I don't, I do simple video edits. I don't do multi-camera, multi-sound sources, all that stuff. I could probably figure it out, but I would not ever agree to take on a job like that because I don't understand the work and what goes into it and what it takes to do it well at all. So I had offered to Debbie, I said, well, is there something I can do to help? Do you want me to go through footage and narrow down? Do you want me to, is there anything that I can do with my limited knowledge in this situation? And she said, no, not really. Because at this point, we're talking a couple of years in and nothing's happening with the film. And, this has been an involved process. This is my first feature film. I've done a lot of other projects in the meantime. I've got an IMDB credit for this thing. It's still not out. All the people that were involved in this dedicated themselves to it. There's a lot of people that were there during filming that were part of the production. And, we didn't get paid for that. We all worked for free. And I feel that if you're working for free, the filmmaker has a duty to make sure that that film gets out. That's the least they could do for the amount of time that you gave to them for believing in your project. And it really sucks when people don't come through. And I've had so many projects I've worked on that never get released because it just never happens for one reason or another. And I think it's terrible of filmmakers to get everybody involved, ask that much of people, and then not have the decency to get the project finished. Now, if something happens, there's an accident, there are certain understandable circumstances. Costs became far beyond what was expected for budget. Poor planning, yes, I could see that. I've had that happen to friends of mine on a couple of films. But for the most part, if you're a filmmaker, you should have a general idea what it's going to cost to make your film. You should have an end game for getting it done, especially if you're not paying people. You owe it to them to finish the fucking project. So Debbie finally takes control back after, 3 or 4 years of not getting anything done, not making any headway, gets her hard drives back from the last editor. And then she hits me with something that she never told me before, which I think might be the other part of why editors were not able to get this completed. Now what she's telling me, and I don't know if she was getting a little ill at this point, because all this time, I mean, years into this, I'd never heard about this before, but now she's saying that she wants the whole film to look like security camera footage, a 4-camera split screen. You know, think about, you're a security guard, you're working at a building, you've got 4 cameras covering the interior and the grounds, you're looking at your 4-way split screen. That's what she wants it to look like. And I said, wait a minute, Debbie, we never talked about this. How is that going to work for the score? You know, I wrote pieces because we were changing the POV, right? That's what the film is called, point of view. If you're able to see everything at the same time, and by the way, you weren't shooting multicam, so I don't know how you're getting multiple angles or what you're showing on these other cameras, but you've basically got 2 points of view. You've got us filming us getting this, you know, filmmaker back for whatever he did. And you've got the guy that's stalking us, his point of view. So you've got his camera and our camera. Where are you getting the other 2 bits of footage? What's their perspective? And how am I supposed to score multiple scenes at the same time when the whole point of it was we were changing the percussion to the non-percussion to give that audio cue for the different points of view of who was filming what, because you're not always going to know. And she's like, no, trust me, it'll work out. And I, to this day, have absolutely zero idea how she intended to pull that off. I love Debbie. She was an amazing person. She was a visionary. She was experimental. And I think it was even called POV, an experimental film at one point. Bless her heart for trying to take that on. But she was never able to explain to me how that concept was going to work. Plus, we had, you know, the whole thing was going to be the perspective of our perspective, the group getting the guy back was going to be a black and white until she slashes his throat, says, I've got something for you, which is what I called the piece, slashes his throat, blood splatters, we get the color wash, and now we're in color. The rest of that scene unfolds, then we're in the movie theater. So how are you going to do that on security camera type footage? Plus, why would you have the camera footage of the people that are involved, the camera that's moving around, filming them, trapping this guy, filming the murder? Why would you have that on a security camera? Like, where would that come from? This is a handheld camera that's being moved around. So none of this made any sense. And I think there was a further plot at one point where the guy filming us was going to turn that into his own film and try and win an award. And then there was another version where he was going to blackmail us for the footage. We never shot an ending, so I don't know how that was all supposed to play out. But the security, that's what, I mean, if I were an editor and I was given this footage and she said that, I'd be like, I don't know what the hell to do with what you've given me. I have no idea how to tell a story with what you've got. First of all, you've got no script for me to follow. So that you're going to have to figure out the timeline of this film. Second, this makes absolutely no sense how you want this to show on the video. I don't know how you would tell the story that way. And this was supposed to be a feature film. We didn't shoot hours and hours and hours of footage. You know, we shot maybe 3 hours worth of stuff. So she would have, and now that I think about it, I don't know how she would have shot the people. Oh, she had 2 cameras, I think, that were just on tripods that were filming us from the distance. So that was how she was getting that stalker's perspective, because she just had those there. She would change out the SD card or whatever every once in a while. I can't remember all the details now because it's been so long. But anyway, so at the end of the day, like I think she went either too far with the concept, or she was starting to get lost and a little bit ill. She was getting very sick at this point, and which obviously led to her hospitalization. The the last time that I talked to Debbie, I knew she was sick. I got a text from her telling me that she was going into hospice. And, that's one of those things where you just respond. You don't think about your response too much, because if you do, you're going to sit there. What is it that I want to tell her? What's the last thing I want to say to this person who I have an opportunity to say final words to? And you just respond. You could spend hours overthinking it, and by the time you respond, they might not ever get that message. I don't remember what I said to her. And then an hour or so later, she called me and I talked to her for a little bit. She told me how much I meant to her, and I said the same. And after getting off the phone with her, thinking, she's going to die any minute. And one of the last things that she chose to do at that time was to reach out to me, tell me how much I meant to her. What do you even say to that? I mean, honestly, she had a lot of friends. She had a lot of people that appreciated her. I don't know how many people really knew her. She was one of those go-to people. You could depend on her. She would be there for you. She would help you out with anything she could. But I don't know how many people really took the time to get to know her. And we got to spend a lot of time together working on this project. Sometimes I would just meet her after work. We would get coffee, meet at like Denny's or IHOP or wherever it was, and really got to know her. And I don't know how many people were lucky enough to have that experience with her, because she wasn't the most open person either, though. She certainly kept a business persona a lot of the time. But between the Survivor Dude project and POV, and other things that she would call to ask my opinion on musically or sound design or whatever, I feel very lucky. I don't know why she picked me for these projects to begin with. I hadn't done a lot of work at that point. I'd done a few 48-hour film challenges, and that was really about it. I'd done some work on a film called The Domain. I was an additional composer brought in to help finish the film. But whatever it was, however those circumstances came together, I'll always be very grateful. And so going through figuring out what I wanted to do for my next album, and I came across the POV folder, and I thought, why this music is never going to be used. I think there's some pretty fun stuff to listen to. There's some atmospheric stuff. Maybe somebody might want to license for their project, but this film is never going to get finished. No one's ever going to see whatever the footage was. I'm never going to see it. Nobody who put all this work into it is ever going to get a benefit from it. So the least I can do is at least put the music out there. I mean, there's no reason for it to just sit on my hard drive doing nothing, collecting dust. Maybe somebody can use it for something. So I took all the files, I cleaned them up, re-recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, and it releases today on my Bandcamp page. There is a link in the show notes. It's a whole $1 if anybody's interested. Check out the soundtrack. See if you want to license it. There are some licensing options through Bandcamp, or get in touch with me. But it's so frustrating, all the work that I put into this film. It would have been the first and really only feature film, because I never did a feature. I left the business really before that. I mean, some people have come to me with projects, and I've done a couple here and there if I really like the project. But after my experience in LA, after my experiences working with independent filmmakers, even recently, I just scored another one this year. And it was another, probably the worst of all the experiences that I had, or one of them at least. And I'm like, yep, this is why I stopped doing this shit, because people don't have it together. If you're going to commit to people, do the best you can for them. Don't let your ego get in the way. Don't let your, don't let anything get in the way. Work with them to make the best project that you can. Get out of your own headspace. If you're the writer, director, producer, lead actor, get somebody in there to give you some perspective on your film, because you probably don't have any. That's the best advice I can give to young filmmakers these days. I've seen it happen over and over again, not just with projects that I've worked on, but when people have asked me to watch work that they've done. And I'm like, this film is just complete shit. There's no coherent story. The acting is terrible. There's no cohesive score. And I look and yep, same person who either was the lead or their spouse or girlfriend or husband or whatever, was the boyfriend was the lead, or their best friend. But they're like the writer, producer, director. They do all the hats because I'm going to be an independent filmmaker. And you know what? If you're not working for the best of the project, you shouldn't be doing the project, period. That's what it comes down to. And you're wasting people's time. The biggest frustration to me, as much as I love Debbie, is that I took a whole lot of my time and put it into this project that no one will ever see. No one will ever get anything but an empty IMDb credit for it. And that really sucks, because I think potentially, depending on which direction the film was actually going to go in editing, this could have been a really cool film. Honestly, it really could have been. But anyway, the score is available. If you get a chance, check it out. Like I said, it's $1. You can also stream bits of it on my website as well. I've got anything that's up on my Bandcamp. I have links to on my website in the music section. I'm going to play you another piece here that I really like. It was when we did the murder scene, and we were supposed to have that color wash from black and white. I had a general idea for what I wanted this to be, but it was when we were filming, and Debbie was the one that was going to kill the guy, and I don't remember. He said something, and her response was, "I got something for you." And that's when she pulls out the knife and cuts his throat. Blood splatters on the camera, and all hell breaks loose. We get the color wash. Everybody starts screaming and panicking and cheering and whatever we did. I honestly don't remember. But yeah, this is the piece of music that I wrote for that. So I don't know if that would have actually worked with the footage or not. That was what I came up with based on being there. But a lot of times when you're looking at the footage and it's edited, or you see it through the lens of the camera and it's not quite what you saw when you were part, because I was part of the scene too. So I'm paying attention to what I've got to do and all that. And then, observing everything at the same time. And I didn't see any of the playback. So one time I saw this, and this is what I came up with that may or may not have worked. Certainly I was ready to take any of the pieces that I had written and rework them to match the actual footage or the edit or, whatever we were going to use. But, obviously never got the chance to do that. So after Debbie passed away, I think it was a day or two later, I got a call from Debbie's phone. And of course, the first thing you do is you just stare at it for a minute, because I knew she had passed away. I mean, there was no question about it. And I'm getting a call from her phone. And of course, I'm like, what the hell is happening right now? It was Bartley, her husband, calling me from her phone just to tell me that she really cared about me and everything. I asked him if he was okay. He was not doing well. Obviously, his wife had just passed away, and his health had been declining a little bit, but he stayed around for another year or so, maybe, before he passed away. And very difficult, because they were both absolutely lovely people. I enjoyed their company very much. They were, always kind and thoughtful to me. And I'm grateful I got to work with them. I'm grateful that they had me do Survivor Dude, because that was a lot of fun. I did find the link to the YouTube video, and I put that in the show notes if you guys want to see it. It's just a few minutes long. I think my favorite piece of music in that is the ending piece, the little piano lick that I wrote for the Ant Attack, which it's this kind of like, old Western saloon piano piece, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, they were great people. I'm bummed that this film never got to be finished. I'm grateful for everyone I met through this and everyone I got to work with, some people that I already knew that I got to, spend some time with. And it was an interesting experience. It's a little tough to go back and relive some of this. I knew it was going to be, which is why I didn't record this ahead of time. This is I'm actually recording this on Sunday. This podcast will come out in just a couple of days, but I just kept avoiding it because I needed to release the soundtrack. I set a date for it, and I'm like, I'll do the podcast, I'll be okay. But I knew that some of this stuff was going to be difficult to talk about, and for those of you who are still listening, I appreciate it. So I'm going to wrap this show up. Thank you guys. Go check out the soundtrack. The link is going to be in the show notes. Check it out on my Bandcamp page. You can also find it on my website, www.scotthaskin.com. If you're interested, it's $1, and it will be exclusive to the Bandcamp page. That's the other thing was the artwork. The only bit of artwork that she had done and sent to me was a very, very tiny square image. Trying to increase the size of it just to get it to work as a thumbnail for the release was far too small and blurry. So even blowing it up just a little bit, it was getting blurry and distorted. I'm like, I can't use this for anything. So I just had to come up with something for myself. And that's what you'll see in the artwork with the release. But that was not part of it. There's a few stills I have that I'll have to see if I can find and upload. I know I had a couple of shots from the movie theater and I don't think I had any from the first day. Because remember, this is like, I don't think I even had a cell phone, or maybe I did. Maybe I just had my first like Verizon flip phone or something at the time. But certainly the camera was not worth taking any pictures on. But we did have some stills from the awards day of shooting at Tempe Pollock Cinemas. And good stuff. So anyway, thanks guys for listening. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week continuing. I think this will be the third and final part of our ongoing series on Mozart's Requiem. And then I've got another classical piece that we're heading into next month that I've already recorded that was pretty interesting, and onward with more episodes and interviews and reviews and all kinds of stuff. So Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.